Hey there, and welcome to my Webflow Memberstack drip content tutorial. My name is Devin, and I saw a post in the Memberstack community forum a while back, and enough interest was generated in a method that I claimed I could create drip content. And so here's the demo, and then I'll show you how this works with Memberstack and Webflow. So here I have a Webflow staging site with Memberstack integrated. And this login button opens the Memberstack login signup modal. And we'll go ahead and create a new test account. Fake data. By the way, this is just an example with Tycho. Tycho is a musician. And instead of, for example, using drip content on a lesson, for example, or a course, I'm pretending like I'm a musician and I want to release my album progressively. So here is the Awake album and the Simulcast album that came out in 2014 and 2020 respectively. That's kind of how I got the idea. So what happens, you click either one, and we'll click listen to album. And so you can see the first album is available, but the first song in the album is available, but the next singles aren't available, including this full album song. Sorry, I'm kind of tired. Same thing happens with simulcast. So as soon as I click that, a drip trigger is activated, and I find the time, and the time is compared to the preset drip durations that are stored in the Webflow CMS. And in order to maintain persistence across each page, for example, you have the trigger set here, but the actual drip durations are calculated on this page. That's stored in the Memberstack metadata object, which is accessible via the Memberstack front-end API. So what that looks like in Memberstack is something like this. So I have a big JSON object, actually a small JSON object. One key value pair is called drips. Inside we have a key value pair for each drip set. In this case, there are both drips that are set, and a GMT string is stored as what I call the start date. You can add other fields to this individual album key value pair. For example, if you want to set a drip override for a certain user, you can do that and set a condition in the code, which we'll get into, but I just wanted to show you a demo of how this works and then how this looks in the Memberstack metadata object before we move forward. So let's go into the Webflow project. The Webflow project has 4 pages. The home page is the outside of the wall page, so this would be like a landing page. This welcome page is showing both albums as a CMS collection list, and it's just a static page, so there's no access to certain CMS specific items. And then we'll take a look at what the CMS looks like. So there's albums and songs. Here are the 2 albums. There's a name, a slug, a description, an album ID, which is I'm using to store as the key in the Memberstack metadata object. For whatever reason, sometimes in the Webflow CMS, the slug isn't available, so I had to create a duplicate key value pair in the CMS. And then the first song in the album, and I'm using that as a redirect when that trigger is created, and we'll get to that in a second. And then I'm also uploading the album cover and then a page background color, which is a cool thing to do if you want to customize the page background color in Webflow. And then the songs, we have the name, it's kind of a weird name. We have the name, the slug, description, the song URL, which in this case is a YouTube embed link, which is separate from a normal link. And the reason why I'm doing this is because This is just a side note, but for whatever reason in Webflow, you're not allowed to have YouTube video, the native YouTube video element. So this guy right here, it's unable to interact with CMS items. So I had to manually just go ahead and use some custom code, and it looks something like that. And so it accepts an embed URL. And then most importantly is the drip duration. And so those are both the first songs of their respective albums, but here you can see the drip duration changes and it links back to its album. So that's all you need to know in the CMS. If we go to here, we saw this page, you click the album, it takes you to the albums template. And here we have specific album related CMS item data, and then this button, which has a custom attribute that I call drip, and it's listen to album. And I'm just using that as a variable naming nomenclature for having everything related to drips. We're going to get into a little code here. So here I'm getting that album ID. In this case, it's awake, and that is how I'm setting the key value pair in the JSON object. And then the first song, which is how I'm redirecting to the next page, because I need to allow for the Memberstack front-end API to process for redirecting. Here I'm getting that custom drip attribute and getting the element using jQuery. Here we're invoking the Memberstack front-end API onReady function with an async await function of getting the member metadata object. If the member metadata object does not have a drip object inside of it, we're creating it here. And then here we're setting an event handler on this listen to album button. So we're doing .click, so on click, running the default behavior. And then if that album ID is not found within that metadata.drips object, so you can imagine you have a user who signs in, they click on awake for the first time, they go back, and then their metadata.drips object is filled. And if they hit awake again, it shouldn't reset their drip start date. So that's why we're saying if it's not present, let's set the drip start date. How do we do that? We get a new date using the JavaScript date object. We create a object literal using the album date object variable name. And you know what, that is being set here. So we have the album date object, which is an empty object, the album ID, which is getting found right here. And we're setting it with this start date and the new date here. And this local time is actually unnecessary because when we convert it, we don't need that. Then we are assigning the album date object back onto that existing metadata.drips in the event that there are already drip variables on there. We're setting it back, and then we're updating the metadata. And so after that has potentially run, if the if block runs, JavaScript is asynchronous. So if it does run, and that is an asynchronous event, it skips over and it automatically goes to the set timeout. And so it waits 500 milliseconds or half a second until we use this window.location.href. We get that song slug, and then we navigate to the first song. Just for demo's sake, actually, here's that user we created. Let's try saying it's June 4th, and let's do -4, so June 9th. Okay, and then let's go back to the page. So for the simulcast album, we went back 4 days, and the song that was available in 3 days became activated. These numbers changed. And then if we go to the Awake album, everything is available. And we'll get to how that's calculated in a sec. But I just wanted to show you to simulate going back and forth in time. So yeah, let's go to the next page. So we've already set the metadata.drips. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So here we have that HTML embed that I mentioned was for storing the YouTube video. Here is a collection list wrapper, and that's based on the album. So album is album of current song. It's a filter, and then the sort order, we have the drip duration from smallest to largest. We look in that collection list wrapper. I have 2 container divs, available and gated. And although they have these available and gated classes, I also have respective drip variables, which are referenced in the JavaScript, which we'll get into in a second. And then this is also just the container for available and gated. And that's what we're going to do. That's what we're going to use the drip song drip attribute to determine whether or not we want to show the available or gated class. So that's the available. That's gated. We end up setting that using client-side JavaScript because there is no way of accessing that within a span. So it's a little hacky, but you'll understand. Oh, let's see. Is there anything else? Yes. So if it is available, there needs to be a link block to the actual song. And this is all gotten in the CMS. And then for the gate, let me show that real quick. Whoops. So this is a link block. I should actually have it, since this is I should make the available as a link block, but this will still work for demo's sake. And then here, let's hide that. Here we have the song name, the drip duration text, and then the drip value, which looks like that. And they're just a way to get the numbers on the page so I can eventually calculate it. So those are hidden and those never show up. And then those also have a drip attribute of drip duration. Cool, so now that you know that, let's go to the songs template and check out the client-side JavaScript. So this is probably a little much, but all I'm doing here is I'm converting these strings into a selector that can be passed into jQuery. So the selector looks like this. It's meant to mimic that, and it's just a way to not repeat myself. So in software, you have the dry principle, so don't repeat yourself. And then, so the strip attribute mini pure function thing, it's being called right there. And then all of the selectors are being set right here. We find now to get the new date, we find now to, as a comparison, when we calculate against these previously set GMT strings. We have this time difference in days function, which takes this now variable, and then the sign up or start date. This is adapted from a previous example, so not all of the variable names line up, but this sign up is the equivalent of the start date. And so what we're doing is we're getting now minus the sign up, which is the difference in time, and then using math.floor to round down the time difference to a round integer. Let's not worry about this for now, but this is the meat of what's filtering and determining which songs are shown versus gated. So here is the Memberstack onReady function. So again, we're getting the metadata. So, imagine you're here in the albums. Member.update metadata gets set. Half a second later, we go to the songs page. We arrive on this page. Memberstack gets onReady again, and then it gets the metadata. So that metadata that was just set is now gotten half a second later after reload. We're getting the album ID. We're getting the start date from this metadata.drips. We're getting the album start date. So this is how we're setting the difference. We're not even using that anymore. Ignore that. And then here, this is the main filtering function. So show hide from drip. So show hide is just, do we show it or do we show a certain thing or do we hide it based on the drip? And so this drip song, as mentioned, is just a selector, which is set here and here. So it's just a variable which has this string attached to it. And using jQuery, we're getting every single div that has the drip song. So remember, let's go back to the songs template. Drip song. So this collection item div. So for each album, there's 4 of them. And so what I'm doing is that's getting passed in this function as wrapper. And for each wrapper, for each container that has this drip song attribute, we're going through. And number 1 is we're finding the actual drip time. And we're setting it based off that drip duration. And then, let's see, the drip duration, I already showed you. Right here, drip duration. So here we're comparing the drip time to the album start date. If it's less than, show the text with the link. Otherwise, we will find the available in calculation, delete that. We show both the is gated text, and then we find the available count, which is that span, and then we set the text like that. So that is the explanation. I know this is a lot, and a lot of people who use Webflow aren't JavaScript people, so it's a bit of a learning curve, but I hope this demo proves that it's definitely possible to institute a sort of drip functionality using Webflow and Memberstack. And there's a bunch of other things that you could potentially do to this. And if you need any help implementing this, I am available. So, yeah, let me know. And looking forward to hearing if this is useful. Sounds good. Thanks for listening. Take care.